Hello guys, and welcome back to Bright Founders Talk from Temi, an international software development company that designs, builds and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Today guys, we've got with us Zack Dugow, founder and CEO at Insticator. Zack, did I pronounce this surname correct there?
Dugow. It's Dugow.
Dugow. French?
No, it's actually Eastern European from many generations ago.
What kind of Eastern European? Whereabouts? We're Ukrainian company, so...
Yeah, maybe we're distant cousins.
Well,
so
interesting.
Are from that area, but also Lithuania, like all over Eastern Europe, if you will.
Nice.
Latvia, Lithuania, like a mix of Ukraine, like modern day Ukraine, all over.
Amazing. Cool. Do you speak any other languages?
I don't. I mean, I speak a little bit of Spanish, but it's pretty basic.
Cool. I don't know any Spanish, so it's better than I. Zack, what I want to do before we get started and going into the world of Instigator, I want to get to know you a little bit better. So what I always say to the guests that come on the show, tell me one thing about yourself which not many people know about you.
Let's see, not many people know about me. Maybe we can take out the pause because it'll take me a couple seconds.
That's right.
I'll think of a good answer on this one.
Any hobbies, any personality kind of trait?
Yeah, I really have a deep love for traveling and my dog.
Cool. What breed?
I've got a mini Australian Shepherd. It's like he's a shepherd.
Cool.
Yeah, he's got one blue eye and one green eye. So he's the real world, and half of him sees the spirit world.
Amazing.
But I didn't realize how much I was gonna love having a dog until I got my dog.
So tell me, how old is he?
2. He'll be 2 in about a month.
So how are you finding the founder world, the CEO world with a dog on hand?
I gotta say, it's one of the best additions because when you're a CEO or a founder CEO, there's a lot of things that are tough to be prepared for. And I think the number one of the top things that I think is for any founder CEO is it's hard to be prepared for the emotional ups and downs. People can talk about those. You can hear some other founder or CEO talk about it on a podcast or in an interview, but you really don't understand the gravity until you've been in those situations where things can swing massively. And frankly, it's why founder CEOs have really checkered relationships and there's so many divorces because it's quite hard to be around that. And having, for lack of better words, like a companion and one like even such that as a dog can be really additive in terms of just giving perspective when things are in a difficult set of circumstances, if you will, which happens frequently if you have a startup.
Absolutely.
Or if you have a big business, that happens frequently. So I highly recommend having a dog to anybody that doesn't, even if you're a very, fast pace, high pace, and you're like, oh, well, how am I going to figure it out? I travel a lot. Look, I travel a lot. I was just in Washington, I was in New York, I'm going to London, I was in Italy. Like, you figure it out. When you have a dog, you'll find people that can watch them, or you'll have daycare pick them up. It's just like having a kid. You make it work.
It's very, very true. I'm not a founder, I'm not a CEO, but I do have a busy schedule and I've got 2 dogs. One of them is a beagle and very not trainable, unlike your Australian sheepdog. So, yeah. Zack, tell me, let's go into the world a little bit more about what you've been doing at Instigator. So you've been there a long time now. Correct me if I'm wrong, over 11 years, I believe.
That's right.
A long time. First question I want to give you before we go into the world of it. When does a company stop being a startup?
Gosh, that is such a good question because, startup means so many different things to different people, right? Some people think of multi-billion-dollar enterprises as startups. So I can only give you what I think my definition is. I think my definition is that if you have gotten to a point of massive maturity and scale in terms of revenue, stability, and predictability, I think that is then kind of a good sign So meaning if you're entrenched in and you can and even then though, like some industries have massive swings, like our industry does, the one that we're in. If you can predict more effectively how things are going to go for your business, I think that's a very helpful thing, regardless of size. That maybe you're starting to enter maybe the word is, beyond even scale, as some people say scale ups or startups, but they mean that. It's more of like for lack of better words, a mature business. But I think keeping the DNA of thinking like you're a startup is a very healthy thing for a business. And frankly, I think it's what's helped tech giants become so successful is they've applied a lot of what has made startups successful: fast mobility, small teams, ingenuity, innovation. And if you look at companies like Amazon, they've applied that. They've just applied it at scale.
Yeah.
And that's allowed them to then become massively successful. But, if you think of a company like an Amazon, they're launching into new businesses all the time. It's not like the way you would think of a mature business 20 or 30 years ago. It's like, oh, slow, steady, static growth, 20% a year. Those companies seem like they generally go bankrupt. If you're consistently innovating and trying to, disintermediate yourself and your own business, that's all very healthy. So that's sort of how I think. But I think you kind of become less of a startup if you can really start to look out and plan and start to hit things more effectively, even though I think most companies struggle with doing that.
When did you get to that stage? What year were you in when you got to that stage?
I think now, even still, we are good in some ways and much better than we were, but it's quite hard predicting the unknown and the massive swings. In the last few years, we've become better at predicting outcomes, but even then, and I look at even the big public companies in our space that struggle with that, because there's so many things out of your control. If you think about the last 3 years, we had COVID, which was a massive swing, and then we had almost zero interest rates. So you had valuations shooting through the roof, massive overinvestments in teams and sizes, and then you had a pullback, so you had to correct those things. So all types of businesses, big and small, I think have actually struggled massively with that, including ourselves in terms of the predicting and forecasting. I was just thinking, is there a better way instead of just predicting and forecasting of what's a better way to not think of yourself as a startup? And I was thinking it's quite a healthy thing, I think, to think of yourself as a startup. One other mechanism may be, or a number of people in the business, maybe across 500 or 1,000 people, but there's a magic number where if you have over 150, it becomes another type of layer of management in terms of trying to scale that out and start to have all relationships with all the different types of individuals in your organization. I do think, but I think revenue prediction, things like that are helpful. But I think thinking of yourself and I like to think of us as always as a startup, regardless of how big we may become revenue-wise or people-wise, is a healthy thing. Because I always want our team and the people in our business to be thinking, who's next could come out of the corner and give us a whack? Where do we need to be prepared for? How do we keep innovating? And I think if you stop thinking of yourself as a startup, you kind of start to think, oh, well, maybe we're starting to lead things, or maybe we're in a really good spot. And that's when, the big blow that you're not going to see coming comes out to hit you. So I kind of like the idea of always thinking about Insticator and our other businesses, OKO Digital and Value, as we're a startup.
Zack, tell me, where did the name come from?
So it's a mix of the words instinct and indicator. So when I started the business in 2012, I was playing with a lot of different names. And so it was mixing and matching. It was all right, well, we want to create a word here. And then we settled on Insticator.
Listen, okay. Tell us, let's go right back to the beginning a little bit more. Can you tell me more about Insticator and how has it evolved since its inception? How has it evolved? So.
Massively. So we got started as, not unlike many different tech companies, we had pivoted into what made us successful. But our first business at Insticator was we were a B2C website or web application where people could predict outcomes of TV shows and sporting events. And then they could win points that they could redeem for rewards and a gamified experience, if you will.
Uh-huh.
We're going to turn that into a business and making it ad supported. And we launched with that. And we actually had success with that. In fact, two of the biggest fan communities on our platform were these vampire dramas called The Vampire Diaries Online and The Originals. And nobody on our team knew about, but like those fans were so engaged in our platform. They wanted to win every type of reward we could give them for those shows. And we had success with that. I think we got to about 50,000 or so active users on our platform. And then we realized that in order to really scale our products and business, we had to change the experience to go to where the fans were. And so we changed the web application to be an embedded web experience and content experience called what we call today our content engagement units, which is one of our leading products today, where we have trivia and polling and content recirculation, where we're driving increases in time on site engagement and first-party data collection for publishers, as well as monetization for them as well. So once we pivoted the product, one site became 10, became 50, became 500, because these sites were seeing very big increases in engagement and time on site and first-party data collection, as well as then monetization and all the advertisers that started to transact and buy off of our platform because of all of the engagement and monetization and first-party data that we were capturing and could pass through to them. And so then about 4 years ago now, we did our first acquisition where we acquired a commenting company called Squawk It, because our product was all about engagement and commenting was another form of engagement and conversation for them. So we acquired them, leveled up a lot of the technology and the experience, and then started offering that to our customers and found we could drive even more engagement between both products because we could recognize the one user and they could comment or they could post or they could answer a polling question and pull all these data points that were very helpful for the publisher and were a better user experience. And so our commenting product today, Insticator Commenting, we use AI and humans to moderate the comments so a publisher doesn't need to be worried about the comment section, as well as then are driving monetization for both parts of that experience. 2.5 years ago, we saw that we wanted to make sure that not only could we drive engagement, that we could drive better monetization for publishers, because we realized that by only controlling a few of the ad units on the site, it was quite limited in how much monetary value we could drive for them. So we acquired a company called OKO Digital out of the UK. Actually, it's about an hour south of London in a city near Portsmouth called Hayling Island, where now that became the base for our global offering of what we do, which we call full ad management, where we monetize all of the ad units for publishers like a service and outsourced ad ops, as well as having our own header bidding container, our own video ads monetization, and our own supply side platform. So a publisher, a customer of ours, can work with us for their engagement products as well as all of their monetization. And we monetize CTV and apps and websites. All of that lives under our OKO Digital umbrella. And then about 6 months ago now, or even less than that, it was April, May of this past year, we acquired a company called Ballyhoo. And Ballyhoo is a brand SaaS platform where we localize all the ad creatives through Google search, through Meta, through display, through web, and through video for any big box retailer or multi-location brand or franchise brand that has typically more than 30 locations. We'll localize all of their ad creative so that you get an ad unit for the store you're closest to. So Matt, say you're in London, there's 3 Kohler stores in London, you're going to get an ad creative for the Kohler store you're closest to. And it's going to be a custom creative that has maybe an offering for the store you're closest to. Maybe it's 30% off of furniture at that location only, or something specific. And then our technology auto creates a landing page for every single store. So customers of ours, big brand customers like of ours, like of Kohler or Pearl Vision or National Veterinary Association, when our technology for their 1,000 stores, we localize all of the ad creatives and all the landing pages within, our technology does this within minutes. And so as opposed to, in order to do that at scale, it would take individuals weeks and months and would be impossible to maintain. And why that's so essential is because for the brands, we're typically driving 4-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 return on ad spend. So we're making them for every dollar they're spending with us, $6 on average or $5 on average, depending on the brand, or $4 on average in ad spend, on return on ad spend, so in revenue to them. And that ties in very nicely for our Insticator business and our OKO business because we're vertically integrating the brand advertisers and the publishers. So we've worked historically in the past with Insticator and OKO directly with the publishers, but all the advertising would come through programmatic channels. But now with Ballyhoo, we're working directly with the brands. So we can now pair all these brand campaigns directly with all the publishers and creating more value for both, and also create more synergies of scale with all the data that we collect. And so that's really helped so as you can imagine, our business has evolved massively over the last 11 years. And so much of that has just been listening to the market, being creative, being acquisitive in terms of acquiring other companies that can bring in skill sets we don't have or technology we don't have. And it's like, if you had asked me 11 years ago to plan, is this where Insticator is going to be today? There's no way I could have guessed that this would be all the products and services we would be bringing to publishers and advertisers. It's so hard to connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that looking back.
Really nice quote. Tell me, Zack, a little bit more about that, about the evolution. When you set out in 2012, I guess it was, 2012, what was the aim then? What was the primary aim then? And how did you even decide then to go for this? Because obviously the industry has changed so much in the last 12 years.
Yeah, so it was slightly different industry. It was a very different industry then, but the initial idea for Insticator came to me because I was watching the show Mad Men, and I was making some bets with friends about what would happen in Don Draper's relationship. And so the idea was that we had this level of connection and community because of this piece of content, this TV show, these characters, these parasocial relationships we have with the characters, where we're rooting for people, right? It's the same thing in sport, right? Mm-hmm. Matt, if you're watching your favorite soccer team, you're rooting for these characters. You may know things about their lives. You may know their kids' names, where they go on a holiday, what they like to eat, and you're rooting for them. And not only that, but part of your social connectivity, even though you may not think about it, is like rooted in the sports teams that you love and the friends that share that, or the TV shows that you love. So the initial idea for Insticator was to take that exciting social connectivity and turn that into more of a exciting digital experience and community. And that's been a lot of the DNA and the groundwork for what we do at Insticator today, which is still very much based around community and engagement. It's just on different topics than purely TV show. It could also be writing about health foods or the news or the weather, but still covering lots in sports and television and so on.
Interesting. Well, tell me a little bit more about that technology. So the technology you're using is incredibly advanced, huge amount of work which would have needed to be had to build it. What are you using technology-wise, and how have you built and developed it over the last couple of years?
So from like a tech standpoint, we're using a lot of different, multiple different code bases. Like our systems are built primarily back-end is based off of Java, and our front end is a lot of React, and we use a lot of MySQL and Cassandra and multiple different databases. I'm laughing because even in my own, because we have different products and because we have 3 different businesses, if you will, like remembering, okay, so our SSP side of our business maybe is built in Node.js, and our Ballyhoo business, I think, is built in, they're using some form of like TypeScript. Like, so there's so many different technologies, and I have to give a big shout out to our CTO because it's quite, Tini Kong, because it's quite, and our director of engineering, Troy Riso, and a lot of our team, because it's quite difficult to take something complex and make it simple. And I feel like our engineering team has done a great job in evolving a lot of the technology that not only have we built and continued to evolve it, but we've acquired other technology and be like, all right, well, how are we going to integrate this? Does it make sense to keep this on the same code base? Do we need to convert that over? Do we need to hire other engineers who have that specific skill set if we're going to keep that code base? Or do we need to kind of merge things? And, we've had to move lots and consolidate a lot of Google Cloud Compute accounts into AWS. There's been so much work that's happened over the years, and it's a never-ending, upgrade and consolidation as we look at acquiring other companies and continuing to level up our technology. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, if you take a pause for a minute and think you're safe, on the tech front, or like, our eng team will take a pause, then you're already behind. A year goes by and now your competitors are using something that pulls in the LLM models into AI and it does it in 2 milliseconds and yada, yada, yada. And now the market wants it. And so really, I think in order to survive or thrive in any business, especially a technology one, you really need a forward-thinking technology mindset around innovation, especially at the clip and speed at which this moves.
So how important is it? You mentioned your CTO there. How important is it to find that correct CTO who understands this challenge? And how do you find that perfect CTO?
That's such a good question because our relationship has developed over a decade. He started with us actually. He started with us as an intern, and we developed a fantastic relationship. He's a key partner in the business. He's really like a co-founder in many different ways. I think there's so many things that have to go right for business to be successful, and technology is definitely one of them. I don't really have a magic answer on that, except for I would say you need to have really, really strong business chemistry with your early team and certainly your CTO and your chief product officer, where you're talking early and often and you understand each other, but really understand each other. So, I can say some things and then our CTO can understand what I mean or what my concerns are. And likewise, he can say those same things and I can do that and not shy about being direct and vice versa. And you really need that I think where businesses really thrive is if you can have that direct, super strong relationship between the business teams, whether it's your CRO, like the CEO, the COO, the CRO, the CTO. If your C-suite can be very direct and honest, and it's not about posturing, it's not about ego, and it's not about blame, that's where I think business success can be really amazing, because you can get down to the root of all the opportunities and all the challenges much faster, and speed is essential there, right? As opposed to guessing and digging. And so instead of meaning, my answer could have said something, well, you want somebody who's got experience at startups and big companies, and that's true. That can be helpful if that's true. I take actually, early team or leadership team chemistry, or, chemistry, especially between the CEO and the CTO, even above that, because if you don't have that strong, for lack of better words, business chemistry, it may not be a long and fruitful relationship. You guys may not grow with each other and understand each other's faults and where you can help each other improve, and see that as a positive versus as something like a chit to keep to keep track of is that, not going to work long term. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit more about your team, because you spoke there and said that your CTO now has been with you for the 10 years since he was the intern. So tell me more about your team. How big is the team now? And obviously you, I guess, pride yourself on kind of developing your team for them to stay with you in the long run as well.
Yeah, so we try to. That doesn't always happen to be the case, especially when, you're acquiring companies and scaling and you want to unify people around a vision. I think you need to have some core people, though, that it's essential that you keep for a very long time in your business that'll help you scale very well. We have some of our solutions architects and our director of engineering have been with us each for 5, 6+ years and have grown with our business. So you can have connections amongst the technology team, especially, that transcend for a long period of time, because a lot of that deeper knowledge in the code base, how things are done, from your talented team, you want to make sure you're maintaining. In terms of your question, how have we how have we maintained them, or how have we done that?
So first of all, how big is your team now?
Oh, okay. So we're about full-time and contractors around the globe, all over. I guess we're around somewhere between 80 and 90 in that range.
Nice. And how do you maintain your employees from obviously such a long amount of time? What do you do? Do you focus a lot on the internal development of the company?
Two things that we do pretty well is we try to keep the pace very high for what we the way that we operate at Insticator and OKO and Ballyhoo, in terms of, and that pace is what helps us be successful. And what we find, and what you want to try to identify very early, is people that love that and thrive in that environment, and people that don't. And the ones that don't, you want to try to transition them out pretty quickly, actually. I actually don't see turnover as a bad thing. I see it as a very good thing. And then you want to learn from what elements didn't work in the hiring process that time, right? Not like, why was this person good or bad, but why was this person not a fit? What you can have learned of like, how could we have vetted this more effectively earlier on? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for startups to also embrace that there's going to be turnover, and turnover can be very positive, but you don't want a player turnover. That is the thing I think that we track very, very, very closely, is that not everybody in your org is going to be an A player. You're going to have Bs and Cs and Ds and some Fs. And you want to make sure that we have a very high A player retention rate, meaning, and you want to segment those things. Because what you don't want to look at is just go, okay, great, what's our retention rate? All right. That's not so helpful because you may be retaining also the wrong people, or you may be churning out the wrong people and churning out A players. What you want to care about, in my opinion, in business is what's your A player retention rate. And if you're maintaining that, fantastic. But if you're churning out C players and D players and B minus players, that's a win, because then you're opening up a space and a slot for A players. And so the people we've retained for a long time, like our CTO, our director of engineering, our solutions architects, and others that have been great, those are A players that we want to keep. The people that we've churned out, we've had some churn, that we've been very happy about that, because those have been really the underperformers that we now have then room to bring in better people.
Sure.
And you have to know that that's all. Hiring is an evolving process for any business, where even if you nail everything, it could still be just, 60-40 that you have the right person, because there's so many variables at play there. And it's not, if it's a good person or a bad person, it's like, is this person the right fit for your business at this time? At this time, your business will be in a different stage if things go according to plan in 18 months. You may need a whole different skill set for your head of sales 18 months from now than you do now. And hopefully that person levels into what you need for that role. So you have to, I think those are some things to really keep in mind. And, companies that, I think there's a key kind of middle ground there. And companies that pride themselves in retention should pride themselves in retention of top talent. Because when you retain, and Matt, you and I have both worked with people that are, for lack of better words, not when you retain people that are quote unquote, C's or D players, they can drag down the whole performance of that team. It's like, oh, come on, I had to follow up with you 10 times about sending that email. Or come on, like if you can lose your top talent by having low performing talent, or that engineer who never checks their code, breaks the system, is told the same thing time and again, isn't thoughtful about it. Like, it's really important, I think, to segment those things, to put it.
Tell me, Zach, really interesting. Now I want to know, just to finish off, I want to know a little bit more about your journey over the last 11, 12 years. A question which I always like to give the speakers on the show is, what do you now know which you didn't know 12 years ago when you went out to start this business? What do you now know which wish you knew, and it would have made your life so much easier? For those people listening now, about to get onto the wagon of building their own startups, what do they need to know?
There's so many things. I mean, we could speak for hours, but maybe I'll give you 2 or 3 key ones. Less is more in terms of people. I would rather, when I was starting the business, and like many founders, you're very resource constrained. And so you're like, okay, I've got, $20,000 a month. And you're like, okay, well, how can I stretch? Or at least I was thought, how can I stretch this? I'll hire 10 people that get paid $2,000 a month, and they'll just all do different roles. I'd rather have a team of 3 people that are A's, that are, paid a bit more and are, may cost more money, but are going to be way more talented than a team of, 10 people that are much more, like junior or less, as an example. Mm-hmm. So less is more in terms of like real talent, like real top talent. Like if you feel like really strong sense on that. Second thing is, if somebody is not going to work out, the signs will be there soon. And then just kind of hoping, when you're repeating yourself over and over again, generally 9 times out of 10, that doesn't fix the problem. Like when you've identified and you've tried coaching and you've tried this and you've tried that, and if you leave an underperformer in there, and we've done that before, it's so much better for the org if you can transition that person out in 3 months or 6 months than 2 years, because you can index for what will happen if I can get this C person to be a C plus or a B minus? But you cannot index for what happens if instead I have an A in this role. The people in your organization that have the greatest growth potential are your A players, not your C players. It's not going the C to B, it's the A players.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen where it's like we've had a C player replaced by an A player and seen a function go from like, a 3 to like a 50 and be like, wow, we could have never predicted that this could have looked like this. And so that's something I think also, because it's a natural fallacy almost, because it's a good thing about humans that we have a belief in people. But if you just have this undying belief in someone, you actually end up doing a disservice to everybody in the org.
So how long do you work on them before you know that they are going to stay C's and B's?
I would say it's more a personality thing, I think, than anything. Every role is different. But I think if you've given somebody, call that 6 to 9 months, and you're giving, and here's the key, because a lot of managers suck at this. You've got to be giving consistent, clear feedback early on. You're not waiting till 6 months, like, hey, here's all the issues. Like a month in, here's the expectations. 2 months in, 3 months in. Are they improving and responding to it? Or are they excited by it? Are they enthralled by it? Or are they like demotivated by it? Are they not engaged? If you see someone is not engaged and they're not, and you've tried a lot of things and they've been at the org for about 9 months and you're not seeing any progress, I think that's probably a good sign. Waiting a year then may mean that you're waiting, 15 or 16 months before you actually transit. Like, I think that can be too long oftentimes. People can react and adjust much faster than that. And even 9 months can be long. Sometimes 6 months is plenty. It does sometimes depend on the role, but sometimes that can be the case.
Really interesting to listen to you, Zack. Thank you so much for coming on Bro Founders Talk. It's been amazing to pick your brain. Everyone, Insticator, please check out the company. We will leave all the links below as well. Zack, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's a lot of fun to be here.